What's up guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today in this video we're going to be interviewing our wonderful guest, Mr. Harry Borovick, who is a lawyer who is an expert in legal AI, and who wrote a book called AI and the Law, which also talks about that. He also teaches at the famous King's College and Queen Mary University, which are two universities which are also in London. So let's get right into this amazing video where we're going to be talking about, well, legal AI. Let's go.
AI works on one of two bases. You either pay, and there's different costs to different systems and that work differently, but you overpay and you typically get more security and more control of your data. Or you don't pay and you get lots of free service, but in exchange, the AI company keeps some of your data. We'll see a future where very basic legal premises, what's the basic law of X subject? I want to sell my house. What do I need to broadly be careful about? That kind of thing. I think that will become increasingly available to ordinary people at a cheaper price than is currently the case. If I have a subscription for a technology product like Luminance, I know what that's going to cost and I know how much usage I can get out of it within my subscription. Whereas law firm fees have historically been quite unpredictable.
So here guys, we have the man himself, Mr. Harry Borovick. And today we're going to be talking about the law of AI. Because as we know, AI is an emerging technology that just came into place and that everyone is using nowadays. And well, here we have Mr. Harry Borovick, who will teach us about the laws of AI and well, the legal things that you can do in AI and what are the restrictions. Because as we know, it's a very powerful tool. So hi. Hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, first of all, let's go to three main questions to know you better. So, what inspired you to do what you're doing nowadays? What inspired you to be a lawyer in AI?
Well, I wasn't always in the space. I was previously a lawyer in emerging technology of different kinds, in gaming, in advertising tech, in fintech, various different types of emerging and rapidly regulated technology. Basically technology where the impacts of that technology are potentially significant enough that governments or regulators who maybe report to governments or are funded by governments have to take a closer look at the technology to protect consumers and businesses. And I've slowly expanded my work in that over the past decade and now work almost exclusively in the AI space at a company called Luminance, which is a legal technology company with its own proprietary, i.e. a type of AI that they own and that they make exclusively for lawyers and people who interact with lawyers.
All right, but what inspired you to get into being a lawyer in the first place?
That's a good question. I had there's a bit of a myth that you need to know that you want to be a lawyer or you want to be in any profession. That wasn't the case for me. I did a politics degree at university. Didn't know what I wanted to do with my career. And I had a friend who said, hey, I don't know what I want to do for work yet, so I want to stay in university for a bit longer. Maybe I'll do a law conversion because that will allow me to take a bit more time, but also give me an additional academic experience that might be useful in many careers. And I thought that sounded quite sensible, whether I became a lawyer or not. And then one thing led to another, and I actually quite liked being a lawyer.
So you just found out that it was a great opportunity so that you can get into many domains and you had many chances. And then from that, you eventually evolved to being a lawyer for AI. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly how it happens.
All right.
Yeah, it wasn't a master plan.
And so how were you able to start all of this? So you were able to start it from high school, right? You started learning all about this from high school, and then after that you directly started in getting into a job into all of that, right?
So I didn't really get into technology and law until I
Yeah,
was at
you became a
university.
lawyer and then you evolved to that.
Yeah, exactly. So I wasn't particularly technical before then, and the legal skill set came first. The technical skill set came along the way.
All right. And so, what made you involved in legal tech space? What got you involved in that?
Well, when AI started really taking off, and actually just before then, so most people would be familiar with things like ChatGPT and Gemini or Anthropic, and those are sort of consumer-facing AI companies that also have business sides to them. And I got involved in AI as we currently understand it or currently discuss it around that time, just before. But for me, the reason I got into the legal technology space, which is much older than the AI industry per se, but the AI industry sort of has integrated itself into the legal technology space. I saw that legal technology was one ripe for updating because lots of the technology that was involved in it was quite outdated, had been around for a long time. And normally that's a good way of understanding what technologies, what sectors of technology are likely to move when there is a technological innovation because they have been static, they haven't moved or changed in a long time. So as soon as something that is genuinely different or genuinely moves the needle, as the expression goes, they're likely to change a lot. So frankly, I was in the right place at the right time, but it was the right company approached me, which was Luminance, to be a lawyer for them. And then it made sense to join them in any event before AI went crazy. And now having that sort of foresight was quite lucky because obviously the industry has advanced enormously since then. So it's been really great. But the initial thing was I just saw an outdated industry that needed a lot of updating, and I thought the work that Luminance was doing was really powerful to do that.
All right. And so I also heard that you made this book called AI and Law. Well, based on this book, you're talking about the future of legal tech, and you're also like from this book, what do you think that every lawyer and every law firm should take away from it?
Well, the idea of the book wasn't really for lawyers so much. It was for non-lawyers. So if you are you and you're going to school or university, what can you learn from AI and what can you use AI to do in a way that allows you to still stay within the right side of what is legally and ethically correct, or at least give you the right questions to ask about what you should be thinking about when deciding whether you should use AI, whether that's as a lawyer, a doctor, someone in design, or just a high school student writing an academic paper. What are you doing and what are the questions you need to ask yourself, or the companies who make the tools that you want to use in order to understand whether you're doing something that's potentially right or potentially wrong.
All right. So we're just doing it like not necessarily for lawyers or people who have their job in that, but just so that people can get themselves better informed inside of these topics, which are like commonly used nowadays. Like AI, it's everywhere. So you just wanted to be able to overall give a better understanding of AI to anyone who reads it.
Exactly. So people
Yeah.
are using AI tools in all kinds of different ways, whether that's to work within the academic context or to manage their money or to do legal work or to create new designs, whatever it might be. The book's called AI and the Law, but the more important bit is the subtitle, which is a practical guide to using AI safely. So it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter what you are doing with it. the idea of the book was simple strategies and simple questions to ask in order to understand how can you manage risk, stay safe, and use AI tools in a responsible way.
All right. And so, how do you think that AI is shaping? How do you think it's shaping the job as a lawyer nowadays? Because, like you, of course, you are doing legal AI. You're doing AI, legal stuff in AI. How is that actually changing your workspace? How's that changing how you're actually working?
Yeah, so one of the most fundamental ways is it changes the dynamic between the legal customer and the law firm. So even companies that have lawyers within their business, they often use external lawyers, i.e., lawyers that are within law firms for additional support. And one of the big factors is a lot of the type of work, especially at the more junior level, that a lawyer like me would use an external law firm to do, is now being capably done by AI tools that I can use myself, and I can maintain greater control, not only of what the outputs of that technology are, but also the cost, because it's more predictable. Because if I have a subscription for a technology product like Luminance, I know what that's going to cost, and I know how much usage I can get out of it within my subscription. Whereas law firm fees have historically been quite unpredictable and often charged on an hourly basis. So the more you use them, the more expensive it becomes. Whereas legal technology allows you to use tech to have a more predictable cost.
Well, what is the benefit of using AI to replace the role of external law firms? Because like what makes AI better than external law firms in this case?
So a very good question. A question lots of lawyers ask me. One of the greatest advantages is consistency. So to start with, we're not trying to use AI to replace lawyers. The idea is we're using it to enhance lawyers. Now, in the long run, that may be that there are fewer particularly junior level roles for lawyers or for tasks that are done by lawyers, but we're not trying to replace the lawyer itself. We're trying to replace some of the tasks that lawyers do, which are repetitive and require consistency. So one of the more classic legal tasks is large-scale review of documents. I get millions of documents to do a deal, and we need to go through them all and check we're happy with them. Doing that quickly and consistently, having the same perspective of what's acceptable and not acceptable across all those documents, is a really big challenge, and one that historically was very expensive to do. Now I can do that predictably in terms of cost, but also in a way that is consistent, in a way that a law firm just using lawyers without technology is not capable of doing.
So using AI as in like a tool to help you do some tasks, yeah. Actually, so if it's helping you do things, what can AI do that like you can't really do? Because if the AI helps you do some of these things, couldn't the AI really just replace the job overall? Because like, what are the things that you don't want AI to do that you trust more a lawyer to do than AI?
Well, it depends what you're trying to ask it to do. So one of the reasons I focus on tasks rather than the job is because one of the main reasons people use lawyers is because they want to be able to rely on the advice of the lawyer. They want to, and lawyers are insured normally, and in most countries it's a legal obligation, like doctors, that if they do something wrong, there is a safety net of insurance. Now, the reason for that is because it is reasonable that if you or your family were using a lawyer's services, if they got it very, very wrong, that you should be able to challenge them legally or take them to their regulator. Most law, in America, the bar associations, or in the UK, it's called the SRM, and challenge them for the quality of the work they've done. So there's still a place for the lawyer there. What is more likely as the technology advances and we move into what's known as a more agentic, using AI agents era, is that agents are more likely to do more tasks autonomously, i.e. without me asking them at every stage to do every single task as a tool. The tool is likely to be able to do more tasks, predicting what I want more accurately, and roll out. So you are right that there is likely to be a future where more tasks are simply done by AI, but there is no task that an AI is currently capable of doing which a lawyer isn't. It's more about how they do it fast,
So,
at scale, and efficiently.
so a lawyer basically uses AI as in like a tool. It's like it's like a calculator. You are the one who is actually knowing what you're doing, and you're the one that a lawyer is supposed to be giving advice in the in the legal domain. So like lawyers, they're always going to be sure to be giving advice, and a computer's not really going to be able to give advice. So you use the AI as in like a calculator basically to help you do some things which would be repetitive and simple, just to do it faster.
Yeah, somewhat. The calculator example is an interesting one because a calculator is probably more accurate with the actual maths once the right numbers are input than most people would be. The point is that the calculator doesn't know whether the source data you've asked, i.e. the numbers you put into the calculator, are correct, or whether there's any other questions you need to ask in order to make the end product of that equation correct.
That's what I mean.
And the human is very good at contextual understanding.
Well, like as you say, AI does many tasks and use it for enhancing the job basically as being a lawyer. Well, how is this going to shape the career of a new and like a lawyer who just got into the job and who just started, and like a young lawyer who just started? How do you think that's gonna shape like their growth path? Because if the AI is helping so much, and if the AI helps you do so many simple tasks, how is there room for improvement for new lawyers and for junior lawyers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the basic point is that at the moment, if you're a junior lawyer or new to the career, you're likely to be doing tasks which aren't necessary for the customer, reviewing lots of documents, for example, but don't necessarily make you a better lawyer for the things that later in your career your clients will really value, like the quality of your ability to analyze and understand complex problems and give them useful advice. The advantage of using technology to replace not just AI, but any kind of technology that can replace some of the more junior, repetitive tasks is that it allows junior lawyers and junior practitioners of many kinds to access and be involved in more complicated work earlier in their career. They'll just have more free time freed up to do more complicated work.
So now that
sorry, go ahead.
No, continue. Sorry, because maybe it will answer my question.
Well, the other point is that they will also have the ability to understand earlier what matters to a client, because they will actually often be client-facing much earlier in their career, because it will be necessary for them to have those client-facing skills earlier, because that will be an expectation.
Now that AI comes in, especially junior lawyers use this tool not only as a mentor kind of thing, like they look at how it solves it, and they look at like from reference basically, but also it's gonna help the junior lawyer grow faster, and hopefully faster going to be able to go into tasks that clients would usually want the lawyer to complete, and more complicated things earlier, because AI is gonna do much more of the work which a young lawyer would usually do at the beginning. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, and so AI can process a lot of data very quickly, but how can you make sure that lawyers don't rely too much on it and review the data carefully?
That is the million-dollar question, and I think that the big point in this is that law firms and universities who teach lawyers will have to fundamentally rethink how they teach lawyers to focus on critical analysis, critical evaluation of outputs of AI. So, a very simple example is, instead of teaching lawyers how to draft something from scratch, it makes much more sense to get an AI system to do the rough first draft of a contract, and then teach the lawyer how to critically analyze that output and modify it to the exact purposes in a way that the client is expecting, adding the context on top. And I think that is a more efficient use of everyone's time. But definitely quicker as an output in most cases, or at least in many cases. And it's likely to mean that universities do have to adapt their curriculum and law firms have to adapt their training systems. That's inevitable. Many law universities already are. I myself lecture at various universities on exactly that kind of subject. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that internationally as time goes on.
All right. And so, like, what you're saying is that lawyers shouldn't like rely too much on it, but like they should use it, like, kind of at least as they can. So like they should maybe review what they're doing, but not completely only use it. So it's like you use ChatGPT to like do an equation, do whatever, but then you want to make sure that it's actually valid and you're not sure if you got it right. So it's like you want to review it and you want to know if it's accurate, but you don't want to rely too much on it at the same time.
Exactly. That's a perfect summary.
All right. And well, as we know, AI is really great for speeding up things, but how do you protect your data that you're giving to the AI, and how do you protect the sensitive data from your clients and from the people you're working for?
Well, I do talk about that quite a lot in my book. So if you want to know some of the secrets, by all means, it's very practical in there. Now available on Amazon. But the most important point is no matter what system you're using, no matter how specialized or secure it is, whatever the system is, the best means of protecting your data is being selective as to the data that you give the system. So if you have millions of documents, before giving the AI system all the millions of documents to review, it might be worth considering actually, do we need to give it all those documents, or do we actually know that only a certain percentage are really relevant to the system, and therefore let's limit what we can do and only use that. Another thing is there are different qualities between them, like companies that sell AI systems, and mostly AI works on one of two bases. You either pay, and there's different costs to different systems and that work differently, but you overpay and you typically get more security and more control of your data. Or you don't pay and you get lots of free service, but in exchange, the AI company keeps some of your data, maybe all of your data, depends on the company, and can use it to improve their systems. In that case, you're probably not really protecting your data. But for most people, non-lawyers, non-professionals who are using an AI system, they're not really that worried about protecting their data because the data is normally not that sensitive. It's not that important. They're just trying to reword an email better or rewrite an essay in a way that makes more sense, or they're trying to use an AI system to help them as a creative partner in creating something. In that case, you can be more relaxed with the data you put in, but it's worth really thinking through those considerations before you start using it.
So the more mature you get into being a lawyer and into law, the more you need to rely on how protected and how sensitive your data is, because like the more experience you get, you want your data to be more protected and more better protection, because like you said, usually new people like young juniors lawyers, they usually like it's not a really big deal if the data is not that protective, but then eventually it's getting more sensitive where it has to be more protected. Is that what you're saying?
Somewhat. I mean, for someone who's like a lawyer working with clients, it doesn't really matter if it's a big deal or a small deal. The deal data is always sensitive because they owe specific legal duties of confidentiality and various other things to their clients in the same way as a doctor. But maybe if you are an ordinary business that is not regulated, maybe it's a property company or something of that nature, really what you're trying to think about in terms of sensitivity is how personal that information is. Is it people's names and addresses? Is a good example. People probably wouldn't want that being put into an AI system that's controlled by a company they don't know. So you really have to assess the type of industry you're in. That's one of the reasons why my book is divided by industry on purpose.
So I see what you mean. So it's like it's not necessarily about how experienced you are, but it's more about the task and how valuable and how fragile the information can be, and how much impact the data could be on how much impact it could give to a person if it's misused, basically.
Exactly, taking what lawyers often call a risk-based approach. Yeah, if the data is used in a negative way or in a way which is not intended by the people whose data it is, how severe or potentially negative, even if nothing actually negative happens, but how potentially negative is the outcome of that data being used in a way that wasn't originally intended.
All right. And so, what do you think the role of the government should play in controlling the use of AI legally in law?
That's a big question. I would say there are some nuances. So I'm not going to get too technical because we could go very deep into a discussion about copyright and various things. But I think for the purposes of your audience, I'd say the most important thing is understanding that consumers, ordinary people and members of the public, expect governments to place reasonable protections in around technology to support them. They don't need to be an expert in every piece of emerging technology or every iteration, every new version of a technology in order to be able to use it safely. They should have reasonable safeguards placed around them, particularly against things like being defrauded or being misled on social media, for example. There's all kinds of ways that harm can come to individuals through the use of AI, either by themselves or by other people towards them. Whether that's deepfakes, and imitating someone's voice on the phone, whatever it might be, these things are critically important for the protection of ordinary people in society. They're very, when you get into the details of them, actually making laws that protect people and having regulators who have powers to enforce these things is actually very complicated. But having a visible desire by governments to implement practical protections that actually make sense for most consumers is a really important first step. And we are seeing that increasingly.
Mm-hmm. All right. And so what kind of legal tasks do you think should always be handled by humans and that AI should not really touch? Because as we were saying, we use AI as a tool, but what kind of things do you want AI not to touch at all? And usually the lawyers should do by themselves.
Yeah, I basically think none. I actually do think that AI can touch any task. I think the question is it the right AI for that task? And there's all kinds of different AI tools or tools that just use AI or have some kind of integration with AI. But I don't think we should be afraid of AI. So there isn't any task that AI can't do. It's more a question of should it. And if you are, for example, speaking to your doctor, now maybe AI is a really good initial diagnostic tool. Hey, I've got a headache. What's the right medication for me? And if it has access to a medical history, if it's a tool by the NHS or something of that nature, then that would be really great because you can get access to quick, low-risk healthcare in an efficient way. But if you've got a really complicated diagnosis of something with a lot of risk, you probably want to have that discussion with an actual doctor who can ask more contextual questions. They can give you a physical analysis, and that doesn't mean that they can't be assisted in that diagnostic process by an AI system. So it can touch it in that way, but not being the sole face of the process.
Okay. And also sensitive data can be, do you see that sensitive data could also be touched by AI?
It can be. It depends how well managed and secure the system is and how well trained the users of the system are to understand what makes sense to put into the system. If they're just putting every piece of data into the system, no matter how sensitive it is, that's probably likely to end badly.
All right. Well, the biggest challenges with AI is usually ethical issues and usually not very equal thoughts of AI. So how do you think that would be in the legal world? Like, how do you think the legal world in AI could prepare for this? Because it's not always that accurate, you know.
Yeah, and I think that is always the thing, is any tool that is consumer facing ordinary members of the public that's providing legal advice of some kind needs to be very, very careful and needs to be clearly marked. So one of the biggest discussions in AI is about something called labeling. And labeling is, do I know I'm receiving advice from an AI system? If you know it's from an AI system, then lawyers are regulated, right? So it is illegal in many jurisdictions, in many countries, to give legal advice or medical advice, for example, without a regulatory license, i.e. there is a government body somewhere that says you are competent to provide this service, whether that's as a lawyer or a doctor. And no AI system should be doing that without a very big warning saying, this is not legal advice, you should seek the advice of a professional as well. But that's not to say that AI systems won't be able to provide some fundamental guidance in a very democratically available way, because they'll be much cheaper to provide basic guidance at scale than dealing directly with lawyers would. So it really does, I do think we'll see a future where very basic legal premises, what's the basic law of X subject, I want to sell my house, what do I need to broadly be careful about, that kind of thing. I think that will become increasingly available to ordinary people at a cheaper price than is currently the case.
All right. And so our last question of the day, what is your message to the people watching right now?
I think people shouldn't be afraid of AI. People should use AI technologies and explore AI technologies. One of the best ways to learn is to play. And playing in a low-risk way, i.e. being careful about what data you put into a system, but exploring the capabilities of an AI system or multiple AI systems, especially if they're low cost or free, is a really good way to get familiar with the technology. And when that technology becomes so common that everyone's using it for everything, or almost everything that's reasonable, you'll be in a good position to understand how to use it safely. And of course, there are great academic resources and non-academic resources. You know, my book aims to do something like that, which can help provide education and guidance as to how to play in a safe way, but also to gently integrate that into a more professional or academic setting.
All right, well, thank you so much for this amazing interview. And thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.